We're live. And we gotta share it with the world, man.
We're live in charge. We're live
Man,
in
you're
two
quiet all of a sudden,
locations.
man. Where are you at?
Pretty amazing.
There you go. There you go.
Pretty amazing. We're live.
No. Happy to be alive, proud, even, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, another week, which means another live conversation. And we're back on our Thursday schedules, which is exciting for I'm pretty confident everyone involved. Um yeah, so we kind of got some interesting topics to talk about here on this particular episode. Destin, do you want to kind of lay the foundation real quick? Of course, we'll do it again once we start recording.
Yeah,
But
of course. So essentially, what we're really going to be talking about is a recent, I should say, relatively recent security breach that's happened to LastPass and its parent company, GoTo. If you're not familiar with LastPass, it's a very, very popular password manager um, application, which you can use to manage, the million of passwords that you have to have for our modern society, right? And essentially, they had a big data breach back in August, and then another one in November, and now there's been another one that just kind of has exposed a little bit more data. And this one is a little bit more big, is a little bigger because it also exposes users' data from GoTo, the parent company of LastPass, and some of its GoTo's, you know, other companies that are a part of it. So it's pretty interesting. We're going to mainly focus on LastPass, of course, just kind of going over that, and it just kind of shows um, how hackers are out there ready to go, and you kind of need to always be vigilant and just ready for whatever you need to do. So yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
really
was
cool.
thinking, you know, it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day, actually.
Hmm.
Along the lines of sorry, my computer's going crazy right now. But I was thinking about this the other day in regard to, you know, uh, privacy and all that kind of stuff, because we're even more integrated now with everything than we were the last time we talked about privacy concerns. And I was
Hmm.
thinking about this with Chat GPT. We've talked about it a lot of times on here. We were among the first to talk about it. But the AI itself, what if that got breached? I don't know what that would look like. But imagine if someone hacked all of the input that you had given to this AI. That's probably a huge treasure trove of information.
Yeah.
Um, that could be at risk. And so, yeah, I have a couple questions I want to ask about this, but let's go ahead and intro for the recording real quick.
Yeah, of course.
All right, we're rolling. We are rolling. Um, yeah, hold on one second. Um, this I want to make sure everything's working right, man. Um, um,
Making sure everything looks right.
there we go. Cool. Okay. Now we're ready to rock and roll, dude.
Alrighty.
Um, man, this thing is really just not working. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. This week we're talking about a major breach of passwords, right?
Hmm.
And people relying on external services, which I have a couple questions about this that I will get to. But people relying on external services to manage and protect their passwords. This one was called LastPass, right?
Hmm.
and it's a major security breach. So basically, someone got their password hacked at LastPass. But yeah. So kind of talk to me. I see here we did. I did some research real quick before we dove into this topic. It's part of a long list of incidents that the company has had since 2011. And we'll dive into that more, but kind of talk to me off the top about what happened in this particular circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah. So this one is a much bigger one, as we kind of talked about, or as you just alluded to. So the big thing about this is that it's kind of a hack more into GoTo, which is LastPass's parent company. Um, because and the problem with it hacking into GoTo is that GoTo owns a bunch of other smaller companies, um, and that the information from some of those smaller companies uh, were leaked. Like it's billing information, customers' usernames, um, all sorts of stuff
Mm.
that were leaked or essentially, were stolen from this. And it just kind of goes to show you that they use the previous hacks from LastPass to kind of slowly infect GoTo, the parent company, and all of its other companies.
So it was these other hacks prior that set the framework for this one to happen, which
Yep.
means that they weren't doing the proper things necessary to clean up after those data breaches and make sure there wasn't more stuff at risk. That's really bad, especially when they're protecting data that is involved with a lot of your personal information, right?
Yeah.
Passwords, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. When you're dealing with people's personal like passwords, and this is a password manager, right? So it's technically people's all of their passwords, right? That's a big problem. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about it a little bit later, about some of the other breaches and the problems with those other breaches. Um, because I think the way LastPass has handled this whole debacle, from really August till now has been very poor.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of their customers are very much very annoyed, as well as I feel like a lot of them are already starting to jump ship, which honestly, I think that is probably the best thing that you can do is actually just
Mhm.
leave. Um,
Yeah.
because
I think this is going to lend itself to an overall conversation of trusting people that you don't see with a lot of your personal information. We
Yep.
all do it. That's the thing. We're all kind of subject to it. I just had an update on my iOS today, which means I accepted terms and agreements that I did not read, just like all of you. you know, and what am I
Mhm,
going to do if I decline it? Sell my phone for a fraction of the cost and
mhm,
go back to a flip phone and then not have the tools I need to do my job.
mhm.
Yeah, that's yeah. Aaron, checking in, man. What's going on? We are live on our Facebook and on our YouTube pages right now. Um, if you're listening on the audio. And we do this every week. Every Thursday night, we go live and we get to have this two-way conversation in real time about each topic. And so it's one of the best parts of this show. We're very excited to do it. So Aaron asks, well, first he says, "What up, fam?" And "What up with you, bro?"
Yeah,
He
exactly.
says, "Is LastPass solely you put your passwords into that you pay for? Yeah, you pay for them to store your passwords? Is that how that works?"
So they technically have two services. So there is a free tier and then there's a paid tier. But yes, I would say if you're going for the biggest tier, then yeah, it'd be a paid service.
Okay, cool. So yeah, and this is going to lend itself to my question of why you would use a service like this.
Hmm.
But you know what? Before we jump into that, let's go ahead and roll the intro, man.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
All right. It's what you call a teaser if you're watching on the audio or listening on the audio. If you're watching on the live stream, you're like, just hurry up and get to it, man. Hurry up. What are you doing? Taking so long. Let's go ahead and do the do the old intro, man. Denniston and I, we've been catching up for 2 hours already. So
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's we had a good time catching up off camera, and now we're getting to catch up with y'all. So all right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. What's going on, everybody? I'm John,
And I'm Dennison.
and this is the catch up. Yeah, man, my computer in the little weather area down below
Yep.
2 minutes ago said temps rising,
Oh.
and then it switched to say temps plummet. I'm like, what is happening? Are we going? Is this the day after tomorrow?
It doesn't even know.
No, I have no idea. Aaron says, glad your beautiful faces are on camera. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah.
Glad
thank
you're.
you.
I mean, I can't live see your face, but I'm glad that yours is in the comments section. We get to have this convo with you. It'll be fun. Yeah,
I
this will
love
be
seeing your profile pic.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, I can see the little thumbnail there. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Before we jump into our topic fully, I want to remind you guys the 3 best ways to support us. Number 1, if you're listening on the audio, jump on our live stream with us. We've already showcased why that is a great thing to do. We get to have the conversation with you in real time, have a two-way discussion with the listeners, with the viewers, and it really expands the conversation. It is very fun to be a part of. So we want you to do that. Go search our podcast title on Facebook, on YouTube. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, whatever it asks you to do. And we'll be live over here every Thursday. Number 2. Wait, nope. I just see 1. There it is. That was quite the finger to show, too. There's number 2. Give us a rating and review and subscribe if you like us. Let us know what you think of each episode, what you think of the podcast as a whole. It helps us grow, and it helps get us out in front of more potential viewers and listeners. And number 3, go to our shop where you can get some good, clean Catch-Up Podcast merch for a reasonable price, and it will support us monetarily. And it is winter right now. We have hoodies, beanies, hats, long sleeves, all kinds of things. We even got phone cases, mugs, t-shirts, whatever you want. Some good, clean merch over at the shop. It's linked wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching. So with that out of the way, let's get back into the topic. So I want to know more about kind of, to set the groundwork. LastPass. Why would someone use, or it GoTo, right? So GoTo is owned by LastPass.
Or no. GoTo is the parent company to LastPass.
Okay. Got it.
So
Okay.
LastPass is owned by GoTo.
Okay. So why would someone go to LastPass and use that rather than, say, Google Password Manager or Apple Password Manager? Which is already built in for most people. That's what I mean by that. And they have reasonable security, it seems. So why would somebody go to something else?
So there's a couple of reasons, because I'll say, so in particular, right, you've got, when we're speaking of, say, Google, right? If you're going to use the Google Password Manager, usually that's only going to work. Excuse me. That's only going to usually work for like Chrome. And say if you do have an Android, it's only going to work for. It will technically kind of, funnel into your phone, but the integration is a little iffy sometimes.
Sure.
And so I would say, and even if we go into the same case with Apple, there's still some fragmentation that you get, where if you are using these password managers, something similar to LastPass, right? It's everything all in one place. You just have one password. And that one password is your key to unlock the rest of your passwords, and you don't have to keep up with them. I mean, the whole point of the password manager is just for you to be able to keep up with your passwords and create strong passwords without having to go into the oblivion of, oh, I've got 3 passwords, and then and you use those 3 passwords across thousands of sites or whatever like that.
And the idea also or the main selling point, I would guess, is just to maintain those across different devices, different platforms, all that kind of stuff.
Correct. Yeah, easily and a lot more efficiently.
Okay.
Um, than what you would say on some of the other password managers and stuff like that.
So when you have a company like Google that has so much integrated
Mhm.
into what they do, like an ecosystem, like we've talked about before. Same with Apple, right? So much of their ecosystem. I mean, you got Apple TV, Apple Music, iCloud, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I feel like they have so much to lose when it comes to maintaining your data and protecting it, right? Because
Mhm.
if they have one breach, consumers will question all of the integrity of everything that they offer, right?
Yep.
Um, so, what would draw outside of that, outside of the things we just mentioned, what would draw somebody to use a third party? Because to me, that would be a concern. They have less to lose. Not to say they're inferior, but
Mhm.
I would imagine that the companies I mentioned would, and I know this from experience too, put a lot of priority in protecting your passwords so their name doesn't get ruined.
Yeah. So I'll say because I myself use a third party password manager rather than what Google offers, right? Or Apple or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, I like it because of the multi device connectivity that I just can't get from, say, Google or even Apple. Not in the same way, right? Sure, most of the time I'm on my phone, and sure, Google will work perfectly for that.
Mm.
But for the other times that I'm, say, on like my iPad or I'm on my laptop or whatever, it's nice to be able to access one password manager um, that easily integrates into stuff better than I would say what Google does or even what um, Apple does. Uh, and so that's why I pay for it.
Okay.
Also, a lot of these password manager, um, third party password managers will also offer like other things that's tacked on to your subscription. So similar like what I use, Dashlane, it also comes with a VPN built into it. So that's also really nice. So I can,
Yeah.
I have my VPN, I can turn that on, and then I also have my passwords that I have saved there. And so it's just a great way for me to be able to keep track of it and just makes it easier for me.
So in the
Um,
case of what you use, does it seamlessly integrate with your browser?
yep.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like a little extension there
Yeah.
that plops in. And then, yeah, whenever it gets close to a website, that I need to enter my credentials into, it automatically just does all the stuff for me. It's
Okay.
really nice.
Um yeah, so yeah, and Aaron says I'm not about this middleman situation. One more chain that can break. I'm here
Mhm.
to hear you out. I I mean that's kind of what I'm getting at, right?
Mhm.
Is just putting that in the hands of somebody else. I understand, in theory, it's a great idea because it's completely devoid of the ecosystem that you're involved. If you come at the reverse way of what I was just saying, you're fully integrated in this ecosystem, but all of your data is inherently protected through a third party rather than a big name that would draw major attention like Apple or Google, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah, but I agree with you, Aaron. I would rather just keep it close to the vest as possible, but I haven't really delved into this world at all. So Denison has more experience on it than I do for sure. Um, I did want to ask, so what's been the fallout um since this breach? What's been, the data that was spread, and then what's been the fallout for the company as well?
So I'll say the since August, right? Like I said, this has been an ongoing saga for LastPass since August. Technically, you can even go back farther back, but I'll say the biggest stuff, right? I think one of the biggest problems is, or I'll say the biggest fallout of this is just that they are losing people, right? They're losing subscribers to their subscription. They're losing subscribers to LastPass. I mean, at this point, it really doesn't make any sense. If you do use LastPass, you should leave it. Another big problem about this is that LastPass has done a very good job of getting a lot of corporate sponsorships.
Mhm.
I know at my last job, LastPass was also part of that as well. Like with your employment there, you would also get a LastPass subscription for free.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
so I'm sure that's probably caused them a really big problem of losing those bigger corporate sponsorships. That's tons, probably millions of dollars worth of damages there. But I will say, just the way that LastPass has dealt with this whole problem since, or from the beginning, has been a problem, and I think that's kind of one of the main reasons why they're seeing such a high number of losses when it comes to customer base. I don't know how well they're going to do to be able to survive because it just kind of feels like the layers continue to get pulled apart and you see more and more problems.
Were they kind
Um,
of an industry leader? It sounds like they were, right?
They were. I would say they were probably one of the first big names in the password manager
Yeah.
ecosystem, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so I think that's probably one of the main reasons why this is such a big deal for them. And I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's like you had one job, right? Their one
Yeah.
job was to protect people's passwords, and they didn't do that. Um,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I know.
so yeah, um, yeah, it's to kind of go through really quickly, kind of like the timeline from, like I said, from August to now. The biggest problem that happened was the lack of communication on LastPass's part. So when they had a breach in August, they said, you know what, we did get a breach, but it was, some data, but not, super important data. It was like, people's names and stuff like that, but that's it. And then they dug a little bit farther, I guess. And then they found out, oh, wait, you know what? Technically, they got a little bit more information. They got people's like billing information and stuff like that, but they didn't actually get access to their users' vaults, which is where all of their passwords are stored, right? Um, and then I would say about in November is when they released a statement saying that, hey, you know what? They actually got access to people's passwords.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. So they held
Um,
this information for a while.
yeah, yeah. Now, of course, these investigations do take a long time. So it
Sure.
really could be that they didn't find out until sometime November when they made that announcement, right?
Yeah.
But it's still one of those things where you would think, especially when you have the possibility of people's passwords being vulnerable, that they would be a lot faster on the take when it comes to just, being able to uh, inform people, right?
Yes.
Because you
Well,
have
and
to now, or go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I hear you with what you're saying in regard to, they didn't know that for a while. But to me, as a password protector, that being the goal of my company, it would seem to me that would be the first thing I knew is if the passwords were stolen, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know what else you'd be looking at, you know, as far as a data hack and all that kind of stuff for a company
Yeah,
like
I think one of the biggest things is that you have to, because essentially you're looking for. I mean, it's kind of like when this stuff happens, right? It's you're essentially doing kind of forensics, but like a digital. It's like a bank robbery, right? You're
that. Yeah,
doing essentially digital forensics for bank robbery. So you don't know exactly. You can look and say like, okay, well, everything looks okay at
sure.
first, right? So you can look at the vault, and of course, I'm sure that's probably the first place that they look was, you know, did were they able to breach, and um, and I guess their first assumption or their first analysis showed that they weren't able to, um, but maybe as time went on and stuff like that, and maybe they had more people visiting somehow their vaults than they realized.
Yeah,
Um, that maybe that was what led them to be like, oh wait, you know what? They probably have access. They probably got the key.
sure.
So
Aaron, making a Steal the Sun reference. I need to say this before it kills me. Um, he said the vault is empty, sir. The passwords are gone. Yeah, yeah. Also, Steal the Sun, my band, shameless plug. First show of the year, February 14th, Barleycorns in Wichita. It's gonna be a great time. Anyway, so no, that's funny though. And yeah, I just imagine that conversation was weird. Like, hey, by the way, that thing that we do, protect other people's passwords. Turns out that got hacked. you know.
Mhm.
Um, well, I mean, does this leave a black mark on the whole industry? A black eye on the whole industry. Um, I mean, or what does that say? What should people take away from the outside looking in?
I think it's kind of like a yes and a no. I think the problem is that yes, it does kind of leave a black eye on the industry, especially because this is one of the more prominent password managers. Um, it does cause problems, but I would only say that it only causes problems for some of I would say maybe the older generation. Um, the reason why I say that is because they were probably one of the more reluctant groups to take up password managers,
Okay,
and say only use passwords that they're like, I write it down in my notebook and that's how I blah blah blah.
sure,
Where almost every website nowadays has some sort of login that you have to create. I mean, heck, if you're applying for jobs, you're creating logins for you have to
absolutely.
you're apply you're gosh darn you're creating logins for that. And
Yeah,
so you need to have some sort of password manager or something similar to that, and making sure that you're creating strong passwords, because again, I have to really drive this home. If you are going to a website that you haven't and you need to create an account and you need to create a password, you need to make sure you create strong passwords, and it's nothing similar to any of the other passwords that you have in that you have on other sites, because the biggest reason of that is because if someone gets that one password, even if it's to a site called like doglovers.com, right? No one's stealing information there. But if they have that password, all that the hackers have to do is literally grab that password and copy and paste it to like a million other sites
right,
and
exactly.
see what sticks.
Yes,
Where do they get hits?
yeah. Well, yeah, and those are the easy ones, right? If they find out you have all these accounts on things they want to find,
Mm-hmm.
but instead they're like, oh, but they also have this one on this site that I just don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then they go and hack that. You're right. That's access to a ton of different things. And don't make your password,
Yeah, exactly.
just don't do that. but but yeah, I think it is a lesson in diversifying your passwords and all that kind of stuff. I mean, even still, somebody has to sift through the data, even once they come across it. So, but it's also about refreshing and updating your passwords pretty
Yep.
consistently, right?
Yep,
So,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is what you kind of want to technically refresh your passwords. Every 90 days
yeah,
is technically uh, the good process. But even if you don't do that, having two-factor authentication on any and all um, websites that allow it is also another good deal
yeah,
there, just for security wise. And so I think that's always kind of one of the best things. And I guess just to kind of give some more clarification. So, two-factor authentication, what that is um, essentially, say you register your phone number with the site or whatever like that. Anytime that you log in, um, the site will say, "Cool, I've got your passwords," or that's the correct stuff. Now I'm going to verify, right? I'm going to verify that this is you, not just Joe Blow who got your password. I'm going to verify that this is you by sending out a specific code to you and only you. So it's going
Mhm.
to send it to your phone number, and then I want you to bring that back to me, and then I can verify that you were you. Right? It's kind of similar to that that fun little reCAPTCHA where you click that checkbox and it like asks you to find like all the streetlights.
Yep. Something
um,
has like half a street light in it, and you're not sure if you
yeah,
should click that or not. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just on the human scale, right? So.
Yeah. So, Aaron asks, sorry, I was, my computer is distracting me. I apologize. So Aaron asks, he says, passwords are protected by a password. Why not passwords protected by really good biometrics? And I think it's a good question to ask or to discuss over, especially because,
Mm,
right, we do have biometrics. We have Face ID. We had thumbprint scanners on our iPhones and Androids for all this time.
mhm.
But all of that was backed up by an actual password that you would type in, whether it's
Yep.
numbers or all that kind of things. So it's a really good question. And I want to know what your thoughts are on that. Why is some of this stuff not just protected by biometrics?
Man, that is a complicated question. um, so I would say the short and sweet answer of it is just because is infrastructure. Because you have to really think about it, right? Yes, biometrics is technically the perfect password, and it's one of the main reasons why Microsoft has been pushing for years Windows Hello, which is essentially biometrics, right? It's using like face recognition or thumbprint recognition or anything like that. Um, and the problem is that you have to find a way to store that information, right? Especially if it's a web page, right? Again, we'll go back to our doglovers.com or whatever. Um, you are now expecting doglovers.com to implement a system where they are storing those biometrics somewhere.
Right. Right. I,
Um,
I hear that. Tinder for dogs. You said Tinder for dogs. Yeah, that's do- that's not the doglovers.com. That's doglovers.org. He went to the
yeah,
wrong one. He went to the wrong one.
whole different side.
Yeah. He disagreed, by the way. He says he only asks easy questions.
Yeah,
And yeah. Well, sorry, not to cut you off, man. I
no worries.
actually was thinking of it in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, say you have a third party like LastPass.
Mm-hmm.
It protects your passwords, but the way you access those passwords is with biometrics.
Oh, yeah, they have that. They still have that. So, like
Okay.
for instance, like I said, the password manager that I use, if I have it on my phone, or even if I have it on my iPad or whatever like that, before I can jump into it, I use my thumbprint to get
Well, right,
into it for
right.
the
And
application.
yeah.
Um,
And Google Chrome does that with my Face ID, as does the Apple keychain and all that kind of
mhm.
stuff. But why isn't or could it just be that rather than having an actual thing that you type in as a backup? Because that can't get hacked, right? If it's just biometrics.
Yes and no. Well, I mean, I guess yes. Technically, there's nothing that's unhackable. So I
Good.
always want to throw that out there. Anything can be hacked. You just really just depends on the time and dedication that you want to put into it. Um, two, uh, the problem is hardware, right? Not everybody has a computer that has a thumbprint reader. So
Yeah.
there's that, right? If you want to make sure that your password manager works on all different devices, of course, we have our smartphones, and a lot of times that's kind of what we do most of our stuff on. But if you're outside of that ecosystem of the smartphone, now you have to have a laptop that has biometrics. Also, you need a failsafe.
Mm,
If your thumbprint reader stops working, what do?
exactly.
Now you're
Yeah.
just stuck.
It's a
If your
catch 22.
camera, yeah, if your camera stops working, what do? Now
Mm,
you're stuck. So
yeah,
that's the reason why you have to have that's there's still a password behind there or something similar to that, right? Even
absolutely.
Windows Hello, I love using it. Um, Still has me create a pin for me to use it,
Mm,
um, just in case the camera doesn't work
gotcha.
or what have you.
Yeah. I understand the need for the failsafe for sure.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, biometrics are just a series of code anyway.
yeah.
So if you
It's
can
just
get your
more
hands
data
on,
points.
yeah, exactly. So it would be harder, but it's still crackable for sure.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, what has LastPass been doing anything since this information has come out to prevent this kind of stuff? Because I think you have to have. Aaron says, "Dang, what if you lose your thumb?" The dilemma. I've actually thought about
Yeah.
this, and I thought about this for a while, um, to kind of go back on it. But I know Dennison remembers this. Me being the technology conspiracy theorist, when Apple first started doing thumbprint scanners, I was like, man, like somebody could just knock me out, hold up my hand to my phone, and scan it, and then have access to everything. And it's true, and they can also do that with my face, with the Face ID. It is true, but yeah, unless you're doing like if it's under your own fruition, unless you're doing face off like John Travolta and Nicolas Cage, you should be able to have access to that for the most part. And yeah, unless you have some terrible accident where your thumb flies off.
Yeah.
Um, but
But I mean, you can always enroll multiple fingers just to be safe.
yeah, right, exactly. So is there any I had a question, but I'm gonna switch it up.
Mhm.
Are there any additional tips, being that we've seen the risk that trusting in these developers and companies can create? Are there any additional tips that you would give for people? Because we're all so integrated. We have dozens of passwords, all of us, right? Dozens of logins, I should say. And so I don't know. Yeah. Are there any additional tips beyond what you mentioned, like two-factor authentication and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, of course, if you are currently a LastPass user, one thing is leave, um, but also change your passwords. I mean, I think outside of that, just in general, like for safety, right, for passwords, um, honestly, just make sure it's not something that's easily guessable. As well
Yeah.
as you know when I talk about strong passwords, don't just make it like, the password thing told me that I needed 12 characters. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Don't do
Right.
that. That's not
Yeah.
helpful, right? Same thing, like you said, don't just name it password. You want to add like, I like to do like nonsensical phrases and I put in spaces and I put in like different characters and I put in like numbers and stuff like that. I make my passwords like super duper long and ridiculous. They're hard for me to remember, but that's why you
Sure.
have the password managers, right? It's because you create those complexity things. And again, I always have to say this, anything's hackable, right? It's the same thing as like anything, any lock is breakable. It just depends on the amount of time that you want to take.
Yeah.
um, the whole point of creating strong, really long passwords or whatever like that is to make it to where you are increasing the time. The more characters that you have, the longer now it takes for someone to be able to break that. Right. And then at the same time, if you're changing your password, say like every 90 days, say it took someone 90 days to take that one password. Well, now you've already switched it.
Yeah.
And so now they have nothing else they can do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then,
Exactly.
of course, don't give your passwords out. You know,
Right. Yeah. Don't email it. Don't text it. Don't do any of that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Um, yeah, these are all great pieces of advice. And I feel like the concern is that for a company that's supposed to be protecting your information, they seem to have a lack of care for doing that, especially with the rate at which things have come out. And it doesn't seem like, I mean, what have they discussed that they're doing different to prevent this from happening again?
Um. So I mean, of course, they've said that they're beefing up their security. They're continuously still sweeping their company's stuff and trying to figure out, you know, if there's any other loose ends that they need to tie up. I think technically right now they're still technically analyzing as much as they can to figure out like the extent of the damage, because how can you mitigate something when you don't know what the extent of the
Yeah.
damage is? But of course, they're trying to secure as much stuff as they can. I think one of the biggest things that happened in the hack, and one of the biggest reasons why it continues to spread, is that one of their they lost a really big encryption key um, for a lot of their stuff, and that's in that encryption key apparently also kind of was slightly shared to other companies. Um,
Jeez.
or shared amongst other companies, I should say, that
Yeah.
they own. And so that's the reason why it continues to spread throughout, because they can use, even if it's like a partial encryption, right? That they grabbed from this, they can use that and start to try to force their way in. It's
Yeah.
like you give someone half a key and they can
Man,
just
that's
kind of makeshift whatever they need to get
yeah, to make the other
in.
half work. That's crazy. And I think we glossed over this. I meant to ask, are there any specific suspects in this, if you will? Is it a hacking group? Is it a kid in his basement? Is it a bunch of random people sending attacks from all over the world?
No, yeah, it's a hacking group. I can't remember what the name is. They may not actually have a name, I don't think, at this point.
Okay.
Um, but it is a hacking group who stole all that information, and I
Wow.
think continues to kind of terrorize GoTo and
There's
the
something else on
subsidiaries part of
NBC
it.
Nightly News tonight about a hack, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but it wasn't related to this.
Mm.
It's a big problem, and we talk about it before. Of yeah, again, we become more and more integrated, right?
Hmm.
But man, I think, to be honest, um, the way that our technology is moving, integrating us more and more rather than us just relying on it more. We're becoming more and more integrated. These are the reasons I think about like Neuralink being a concern. If my brain's connected to a computer, hear me out though. Let's
Mm.
say this computer is, well, we already know a lot of it would be used for people who are like paraplegic, give them the ability to walk. Some people can gain the ability to see again from Neuralink. It's not going to be like you and I see, but they can strap a smartphone to their chest and the feed from the camera would go into their Neuralink receptor and they would see a black and white image of what the camera sees, basically, which is crazy.
Hmm.
But, um, my point is, and maybe all they do is they use this chat GPT, open AI information. It's not directly connected to the internet, and that's how we connect to it, right? I don't know, but let's say it's connected to the internet. That, in theory, makes your brain and central nervous system hackable, right? And I don't know what that would look like, obviously, but I just like you said, everything's hackable. I think it's really going to take a major improvement, you know, on security, cybersecurity type of things. The expertise will only be more and more needed, man. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
On top of that, too, I remember earlier this week, Ticketmaster was the CEO of Ticketmaster was on Capitol Hill because he was getting grilled for what happened with the Taylor Swift stuff. And it
Mm-hmm.
was a bunch of bot attacks that basically derailed this whole thing. And now these people that had their bots buy up the tickets are reselling them for thousands of dollars, you know?
Well,
Making
yeah, yeah. I will say that is kind of what they've said, um, where they also during their hearing they did, you know, uh, it was brought up that it's like other sites deal with bot attacks too, but
exactly. Well, that
yeah,
was my point.
yeah,
The other sites are able to handle it, but for some reason Ticketmaster wasn't. So whether
yeah.
that's true or not,
They also profit
um,
off of the
it
higher
would
ticket
either
sales.
way they're profiting off it. That's exactly
Yeah,
right. So maybe they do have the security pieces in place. I think they probably do, but it still exemplifies how important this is and will continue to be in the years to come. I agree, man. I do. I think that's kind of the whole thing. They're a monopoly. They are the only place you can really buy tickets from, unless it's direct from the venue. But most venues they have an exclusivity contract with, so you still end up buying it. I mean, etix is the only other one. That's the only other one I ever buy tickets from is etix.com.
mhm.
Um, and it's a problem, man. It's a really big problem because they jack up the prices, even if they are all bought reasonably. They jack
Mhm.
up the prices, and yeah, I mean, it's price gouging, and they have all sorts of tactics. They basically can control the music industry, man. They
Yeah,
can control who makes it bigger than others because they can manipulate what who can afford, what their ticket prices are and how many are available, that type of thing.
yeah. No, you're
So
right.
anyway, um, yeah, I think we had a good discussion on this. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Uh, yeah, I think the one last thing that I kind of wanted to talk about, or not really talk about, but just kind of a kind of closing our deal here um is that a lot of the you know LastPass themselves did do I will say the company themselves, I think they really did kind of handle this whole situation poorly. I think it's a unfortunate event that happened to them, and I do think it's kind of a hard thing for them to kind of survive. I don't know how well they're going to do.
Yeah,
Um, but I think the biggest thing about this, and you kind of talked about this earlier, is just it does raise that alarm about not just these third party password managers, but in general, other password managers as well.
yeah,
Or even just like, your big names, like your Googles or your Apples or whatever like that. Um, that may not be as secure as you think, and so I always want to make sure I just kind of wanted to raise the awareness of, if you do have, say, a password manager, or say you're just using regular password stuff that you kind of get through Google or through Apple or something similar to that, um, check some of your older ones and see if some of your older passwords, and make sure that those are up to date. Because you know you don't know how vulnerable you are until you really look at it. I think,
yep. And they make it
especially. Or
go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say they make it really easy to know if there's a risk of your password being compromised too. It's
Yeah,
an
exactly.
easy change.
Yeah, a lot of these newer password managers, um, have threat protection, where they essentially, or dark web protection, I think a lot of them call it, but it's essentially, where they scour the dark web, and see if your passwords are being shared,
Mhm.
and then they'll give you alerts. So that's actually another service that tends to be a little bit more, um, uh, popularized in some of these third party uh, password managers than others.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
What else were you gonna say then?
No, I was just gonna. I mean, the last thing I was just gonna say is just uh, whatever you're using, whether it's any of those, just make sure that you're kind of going through and making sure you're up to date on it.
Yeah.
You don't don't feel as though just because this is a site that you aren't frequenting that you don't need to take it seriously, because it can always be something that could come back and get you, because once you give someone a door, an open door, it's not that much harder to kind of jump from there to a little bit more. I think LastPass probably figured that out a little bit more than they wanted to.
Yeah, well, and to your point, it's probably even greater risk, if you haven't used the site for a while. Um, either delete your account or go in and change your password, because those are probably the
Yep.
ones that they'd look for, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, actually, I think the original attack came from LastPass's shared server space.
Hmm.
It wasn't even like they essentially attacked the company that LastPass shares server space with. And then from there, they leapfrogged
Yeah.
to LastPass. So it
Wow.
wasn't even technically LastPass who started it. It was the company that they were using it on. So again, it shows that our data is out there amongst these
Yeah.
other companies, and
Yeah.
it can be used in multiple ways to kind of infiltrate our lives. So
Well,
always
and
want to be sure on
to kind of circle all the way back too, I mean, that's a testament to those terms of service that no one reads. I'm sure
that.
that was probably mentioned, that information is shared,
Yep.
but people didn't see it. And yeah, not that maybe it wouldn't have made a difference, but still, people they were likely very unaware,
Yep.
and yeah, data became available because of it. So it's interesting. Well, I think we had a good discussion on this. Thank you guys for joining us on Thursday Night Live. Thank you to Aaron for kind of being a third co-host on this. Um, so it was a good time. I'm glad we had the discussion. We are back to our regularly scheduled programming of Thursday evenings. So give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, leave us a rating and review. If you want to support us monetarily, go check out our shop and get you something cool. Get you something clean. So, all right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch up with you next week.